Hello there, this is Cheryl Lampard. Apologies for the few minutes delay, we had some technical problems. Anyway, welcome to episode 9 of Knitter Matters. Thank you for joining this page. I'm really pleased that you're here. And feel free to post any comments on this page, whether now or later. I can't see the comments you're posting right now, but I promise I will answer them later. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant. My company is Style Matters International. And my two passions are sewing and knitting. And in particular, knitting is the thing that I do every day to de-stress and relax. And I love doing it. So much so that many years ago, I owned a yarn store in Brighton, England called Yommel. And one of the true joys of owning a yarn store is that people ask you to teach them how to knit. And I was very happy to do that then. And I'm delighted to still do it now. And through the wonders of modern technology, it's wonderful to be able to do it on Facebook Live. So, and if you're new to this page, please let me know where you're from. This is today's topic, blocking. But before we get on to that, I'm just going to talk to you about something else that's really important when it comes to yarn and knitting. So I'm going to sit in my chair. We're just going to move the camera around. One of the really important things about knitting is that when you buy your yarn, you need to buy the same dye lot. And the reason is because when yarn is dyed, it's dyed in batches. The colour is the same, but the batch of dye may vary very slightly from this week to next week. There's nothing that can be done about that. It is what it is. It's the way it works. But when you're buying yarn for a garment that needs more than one ball of yarn, you really want the same dye lot, because although the balls of yarn will look very similar together, when you knit with two different dye lots in a piece, you're going to find that you get a line of a different colour. So how do you know what dye lot you're buying? And this is really important now because we're buying a lot of yarn online. So if you have the opportunity to look when you're buying your yarn, it's going to be on the ball band. It doesn't matter whose brand it is, it doesn't matter what the yarn is, but you'll see here it says the colour. That colour is 1000. On this ball band, the colour, it's actually a name, Rose Gold Fawn. Very nice too. And there's the batch number. On here, it's the lot number. So whether it says lot, dye lot or batch, it's really important that this is the number that you get. Or it's the same number, I should say. And on this large ball band, there's lots of information here. Again, it's called Alabaster. It actually has a colour number as well. And this is the dye lot number. Okay. So if you're buying online, how do you know you're going to get all of the same dye lot? Well, yarn suppliers know, generally speaking, that you want the same dye lot. And very often, their websites will say, we have 7 balls left in this dye lot, whatever it might be. But that's not always the case with just general craft stores. So if I were you, if you order over the phone, tell the person at the other end of the phone that you want, they must be of the same dye lot. And if you're ordering online, there's usually a comments box. I would just, to be sure, say you need it of the same dye lot, okay? So that's an important thing. Let me get these ball bands out of the way. Now on to the subject of blocking. I'm just going to bring this in because if you are watching this again afterwards and you want to know where we are in the video, you can just fast forward to the bit that you need. Okay, we're going to talk about blocking. So what is blocking? Why do we need to do it? Is it important? Well, blocking is it's a process of wetting, steaming or pressing knitted pieces to give them their final shape. And it's mostly done before the item is sewn up or seamed. The only exception to that is if you're knitting in the round, and then you would do this after the garment is complete. But we're talking about flat pieces here that aren't knitted in the round. Because as you knit, edges roll in, hemlines sometimes roll up. If you're knitting lace stitches, you'll find that they are really scrunched up on the needles. So when you block, you're smoothing all that out, you're unfurling the edges. And it's really important in something like this this hexagonal piece, because this is part of a larger garment that has to be sewn together. So I need to be sure that when I do my blocking, all my straight edges, my hexagon edges, are the same size, because I'm going to need to piece these together, and if they're not the same size, I'm going to have a problem. So this was a good example of why you need to block to get the final dimensions. Now, do we need to block everything? Possibly not. When it comes to lace knitting, you absolutely do. And there's a reason for that. You just don't see the openness of the lace knitting unless you're going to block it. It looks on the knitting needles like a piece of scrunched up paper almost. But do you need to actually block everything? Well, not always. This is a cowl, and you've seen it on the mannequin before. I haven't blocked this because I just don't want to lose that nice texture that we've got with this really nice sort of 3D design. And if I block it in any way, it's going to spoil that. So I'm very happy with that the way it is, and I'm not going to block that. And that was actually knitted in the round as well, so you know, why would I block that? There are certain things, certain yarns that you shouldn't block. One of them is synthetics. This was a piece that I blocked within an inch of its life because I was demonstrating a few weeks back how to shape a sleeve, and this is a miniature sleeve. But I blocked this deliberately flat because it was curling up all over the place, and I wanted to show you. But look, there is now no life left in this knitting at all. There's no stretch. It's horrible. It's fine for my demo piece, but you wouldn't want that in a garment. So how do you know whether you should block or not? Well, again, let's get back to our ball bands. The ball band will give you a lot of information about how you should care for the yarn. This tells you it's 100% acrylic, so I'm not going to be blocking that, because also with acrylics, they tend to be the same shape and size on the needles as they are when you take them off. There's not much that you can do with acrylics. There's a little bit, but I would be super careful. But it tells you here how to wash it and how to dry it. So, and it tells you it's 100% acrylic. You need to know that. With this one, this lovely yarn, it's got 3 different yarn components: British alpaca, merino, and mulberry silk. So I know I'm going to have to be careful when I block that. As I say, the ball band's not going to tell you how to block it. You're going to have to research that or look it up or talk to me about it. I'll be happy to help you. But when you know your yarn content, you'll know how to block. Now, that's the first thing you need to know. I'm just going to show you here. I have to move this carefully. So all blocking is not the same. There's different ways to do it. If you're doing a straight piece, this was a stole that, again, we put this on the mannequin. But I still block scarves and stoles. They're long straight pieces, but again, when you've knitted, the edges curl in. And certainly on this one, the edge, I don't want that to be anything other than that nice kind of flare, curved in and out edge, because the cables are right on the edge and I want to retain those. But so that I could get this straight, I use what's called blocking wires. I've just shown you here on a very small piece. Obviously, when I block this, I would run the whole thing out, you know, for however many feet this stole is. And these blocking wires, I insert them on the edges, and I would obviously have another one at that end, and then I pin those out. So it keeps those edges from curling in and rolling out. And these blocking wires, they're specifically for that. So if I take one out, you can see they don't have sharp pointy ends. They have ends that are sort of flattened. And you can buy sets of those. Let me just get this out of the way before I stab the cameraman here. Now, let me show you. This is a piece of lace knitting. This is the difference that blocking makes. This is a piece of lace knitting. And you can see it doesn't look very spectacular. That's straight off the needles. It's just a sample piece that I did. It's straight off the needles. But look at the difference now when it's blocked. Take that off there so you can see it. That's the unblocked piece. You can clearly see that the definition in the pattern, and because this has a scalloped edge sort of knitted into it, I've been able to pin those out, get my sides nice and straight, and you can really see how the design plays out, which you just can't in this. So I'm going to show you how to do this. There's different ways to block. You can block with an iron and never go down on the knitted fabric with a shot of steam. You can do that with a cloth over the top. You do need to be careful. If you're doing 100% wool, be careful of that. If it's a design with lots of cables, as this one is, you certainly don't want to flatten them. But if you steam it, you can pinch out the cables with your fingers to get the definition back in. But always do a test piece, and that is why, another reason for doing your sample swatches before you even begin knitting, because you do those, don't you? If you do your sample swatch to get the gauge right, you can keep that and use that to test out how you're going to block it. But let's stick to blocking this piece. Now, what you need are something like, these are blocking pads. These I particularly like because they fit together like a massive jigsaw puzzle. And I think I've got about 18 of these, so I've got plenty if I need to have a really huge thing. And then I just take them apart when I want to pack them away. There's all sorts of blocking pads like this. There's thicker ones that you can really stab into. I like these that almost have a sort of, almost like a carpety effect on the top, because stuff doesn't slide about on it. But everybody has a preference. If you don't have blocking pads, you can do it with thick towels. Just roll out some towels. That's what I used to do. That will do the job. And you can also get blocking pads that have got grids imprinted onto the top. You may find that useful. I tend to put like a large gingham cloth over the top, and I use those as guidelines. But whatever works for you, but you do need something to protect the surface of whatever you're blocking on and to actually pin into the pad. So now, wet blocking. Not everybody likes wet blocking, but I'm going to show you how to do it. It's really important for lace. Now, if this was a shawl or a garment, a large garment, I would submerge it into some water, and again, I'd very gently handle it. You don't want to be washing and squishing around. The idea is to get the thing soaked, but as this is just such a small piece, and I've got limited space here with the camera, excuse me reaching across, I'm just going to use my spray bottle. I'm going to get this really wet, and this is all natural fibers, so it's going to respond well to that. Get it nice and wet. Now I'm just going to roll it in my, get that wet there, just a bit more at the edge. Okay, you can see my hands are soaking wet. So right, now I'm going to roll that, and I do this if I'm wet blocking. I'm just going to roll it because I want to squeeze out most of the water. Okay. Now this is, you can see how much water's come out of that on my little piece of towel. I want this damp now, but I have to saturate it first. Now I know the dimensions, and you'll know the dimensions of the finished piece because your pattern will tell you. I'm going to sit slightly sideways so that you can see better what I'm doing. Oh, got my chair stuck. So I know that it's 7 inches this way, and you need something like these. These are T-pins, readily available at craft stores. Excuse me. They're better than just ordinary pins. You can see them better. They're much easier to push in to the mats. So I'm going to get my first pin in. I'm sorry if I'm blocking your view, but I need both hands for this. So I'm going to get my 7-inch point, and I'm going to kind of push my pins in at an angle. Much easier to do that. So that's my 7 inches. I need to stretch that out to there. Okay, then I'm going to get my 7.5 this way. I know my hand's going all over the place, but I promise to get out of your view in a minute. No other way to do this at the minute. Okay, and then once I've got that blocked out to my other 7.5 inch, I know that's got to go up there. There we go. Now I can start kind of moving my piece around, and if this was a big piece, this is where I would use the blocking wires. If this was a straight edge on a shawl or a scarf, I'd run the blocking wires up there, and then with the wires going up that way, I'd just poke a pin in like that, so it secures the wire. But the blocking wires are really handy for big pieces. So I'm just going to pop these pins in around the sides first. And if you find that's drying out a bit as you do it, you can always just give it another little light spray. That's fine. Okay. Now I would check this with the ruler as I'm doing it to make sure it's the same width, but in the interest of time here and not getting in the way of the camera anymore, I'll just do this. So you can see now I need to get another scallop in here. Okay, that I need to pull down nicely. And again, a lot of lace knitting, you have scallops around the edges. You just won't get that definition unless you block it. I'm going to reach across here because I need to pull this up. Now again, I would be measuring this so that I make sure my height is the same. And then I would just make sure I've got my shape the way I want it. I've got my scallops how I want them. Or sometimes they might even be points. And you know, you can maneuver it how you want. That's the wonderful thing. Wherever you want it to be. This isn't perfect at the minute, but you can see how I'm getting there. So I don't want to spoil that too much. I might just put a pin in there just to hold it, and maybe, okay, bring that one down a bit. You can move them around where you want them. And again, I would be checking this with a ruler, but so that's how you block a piece of lace knitting. Okay, and you need to leave that, you would need to leave that until it's thoroughly dry. Do not be hasty and think, well, it's nearly dry. You have to let it dry thoroughly. And even afterwards, when you take it off the block, you need to let it relax a bit because it might pull back a little. And if you find it's still not quite the right dimensions, it's not the dimensions that you need, you could block it again. Just be very careful not to handle it too much when it's in the water, especially when it's natural fibers, especially when it's wools and fabrics like that. You know, you just don't want to disturb it. You're trying to get stitch definition, you're trying to get the pattern defined, but if you handle it too much, you might find that you're kind of making it a bit fuzzy. And certainly with things like Angora and mohair, yeah, you don't want to press those. You can block them if need be, but you certainly don't want to be pressing them, and minimum handling. And they might be a case with a fluffy yarn that actually you spray block it like I have done here rather than saturate it in a bowl. But this is the basis of blocking. Okay, so once that's dried thoroughly, you can take it off. You can let it relax. If you need to block it again, you can, but hopefully it will be how you want it. And remember, the dimensions will be on the pattern that you've done. If you don't know the size of it, the dimensions will be given on the pattern that the designer has created. And that's why you've done your swatch. Remember, you do your little test swatch to get the gauge. If the gauge of your knitting is right, then your finished piece should be overall okay. But they'll usually say it's meant to be however many inches by however many inches or centimeters, whatever that might be. If it's a piece that you've designed, well, you can decide how you want it to be. So that's our blocking lesson. I hope that was helpful. If there's any questions, please leave them on the Knitter Matters page, or follow us on Instagram. I'm here to help, so whatever comments or feedback you want to give me, I'm happy to receive it, and please, any questions. So until next week, stay well, stay safe, stay home for the moment, unless we can go back. Keep calm and keep knitting, and I'll see you again next Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.